What is up, dudes and lady dudes? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today, I've got another video for you. This time, we're doing a little discussion talking about every deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! That, can compete. I guess we're sort of going in order. I put them in a very rough order. I did this quickly because I wasn't too stressed on the actual order of everything, but I'm going through 25 decks, what I believe to be roughly like the 25 best decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! And what I like about this format is the format doesn't feel... Okay, every format's going to have some kind of dispersion between Tier 1, the stuff at the very, very top, and the stuff below it that's still decent decks, but just not quite on that level. So what we're going through today is we're going through that stuff because this format is just better for those decks. Those decks actually can attempt to compete. They can attempt to give, these Tier 1 decks more trouble than they did last format, where the synchro combos were just too good. Adamancipator was too oppressive with the synchro stuff combined with stuff like Block Dragon, and I think the format right now is much more balanced, but we're going to get into this slow and steady. We're starting off with number 1, though. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about any specific deck. We're going to kind of go through this. So starting off, I believe that the best deck in the game is Dragon Link. I don't think it's that close. I think it's very, very the best deck. It takes at least 2 hand traps to even attempt to stop this deck if they didn't hard brick, which obviously they build their decks not to do that as much as possible, and it's insane. It's just a really, really strong combo deck that plays through a lot of disruptions. Next up, I put in for Noble Knights. I think this is a really good deck. I think it's kind of secondary to Dragon Link. It just does things. It's almost as good at playing through disruptions, but not quite as good in terms of extenders and stuff, playing through disruptions. But it is still very, very good. It has a lot of really cool interactions. Ripping cards out of your opponent's hand is very, very strong, especially when you get to see it. I really think Smoke Grenade should have been hit on the last ban list, and that would have made this deck a lot more fair, because I think that's just the icing on the cake. Even if you could equip something that gives Charles some kind of not interruption, some kind of protection, targeting protection from, I forget which one does it. Is it Ogier or I can't remember, but it's not important. The important thing is the hand rip is just a little bit too much. The deck already sets up at least 2 negates with a pop, bare minimum, and combine that with 1 or 2 hand rips. You're already able to rip cards out of the hand with Aqua Dolphin. You don't need to pair that up with also the fact that it can just hit your opponent for another card, but any card that time, and it just feels a little bit too much, a little bit too unfair. So yeah, number 2. Next up, we have Dinosaurs. This deck has been lingering around just outside of Tier 1 for so long, and now that this deck can abuse synchro combos on its own, it's kind of stepped up into Tier 1, and especially with stuff a lot of the other decks like Adamancipator getting a little bit worse. Dinosaurs definitely have a little bit more of a lane to work in here, and so they're good. They can go first, they can go second. They're good. Okay, they're good. Next up is Eldritch. This could be any variant you're talking about. You could be talking about old invoked variants. It could still be a synchro variant, although I don't think they're as good as before, or some weird pure stun control variant. I think it's a good deck just regardless. Just such a good engine to combine with so many different things. You can be so creative with that, what you want to combine it with. So Eldritch at number 4, still think they're very, very good. And number 5, and rounding out what I consider to be the top tiers of Yu-Gi-Oh!, the top 5 decks, is Dogmatika. Specifically Dogmatika Invoked is the variant I'm looking at here. Just so good. They play through disruptions. They can get to disruptions. Even if you negate 2 of their cards, they can still end on 2 disruptions via hand traps or via just Dogmatika Punishment. And you got to respect that. You have to respect that. It can grind. It does it all. It's a very good mid-range deck, mid-range/control deck. And I think you have to put some respect on it, or it'll catch you off guard. And then we get outside of that. So starting with the 20 decks after the top 5 decks, we're going to start with Salamangreat here. This is makes a lot of sense. This deck has been there for 2 years now. It feels like we're about 2 years, maybe a little bit less. It's good. It's not amazing, but it's good. It does what it does really well. It's one of the best trap decks because it also does other mid-range plays as well. It has an insane grind game, and then you also have the availability of playing a ton of hand traps, which is very, very nice in a format like this where you have to find 2 hand traps going second at least. So this deck can do it. Next up, I have Subterrors. This is another one. I think this deck, some people are sleeping on how much better this deck is now than it was before. Like, the Red Eye stuff is very, very good for the deck. They're just playing hard. You just hard play 3 copies of Red Eyes Fusion, and you drop them, because you could just set a Guru, activate a Red Eyes Fusion, end on Guru, Fiendus, plus, Red Eyes Dragoon, and it's scary. It's no joke. So, yeah, I think Subterror is better for that, and as well as the Numeron cards are also very nice, because this deck doesn't leave the monster face up. You set the Guru, then you can do the Numeron stuff, and you're good to go. So, again, people sleeping on it. People sleeping on Guru. They're much better than they were before. Next up we go, what is this, number 8, Adamancipator. I have my notes here if you see me keep looking down. Adamancipator, it's a really cool deck. I think it's much cooler now. Like, it's still a cool combo deck, still pretty good. I've played against it since the hits, and it still plays through Disruption, especially if you're drawing, like, Analyzer plus Signs. Like, the deck actually can play through Disruption. But it feels much less degenerate now, so I think that's kind of pushed it down to number 8 for me. But still a top 10 deck in my opinion, so I still think it's good. You got to respect it for sure. Next up, Zoodiac. This one is definitely on the come up as we get stuff like Tri-Brigade, as we get stuff like the new Exceed boss monster that can be overlaid onto any Exceed monster coming up, and he's really, really strong. So that could be something that pushes this deck up higher, potentially into tier 1 if people play it enough. So definitely got to put respect on Zoodiac for sure. Next up, I have Sky Striker, another control deck. This one's pretty good. I mean, we just got 3 Widow Anchors, so the deck's just a little bit more consistent, a little bit better going first and second, because that's just a Disruption or a good going second card. You gotta love 3 Widow Anchor. And yeah, I mean, Strikers. I mean, even without Engage, even with multi-roll to 1, Hornet Drones to 1, I mean, man, this deck still gets it done. So yeah, Strikers number, what is that, 11? 10 for Strikers. Which takes us number 11, which is Pendulums. It's just, I guess it's kind of generically Pendulums, not really specific variant of Pendulum. This could be pure Zephyrs, which I think is really awesome and underplayed. Like Triff level Pendulums of set up a bunch of negates, whatever it is. They're still a powerful deck. They don't get new cards anymore, so they're just working with what they got for like the time being and the future. So, but they're still a good deck. You still got to respect them. Madolche's up next. This deck is very, very strong. 1 card plays, 1 Magellan, 1 Angeli, 1 Petting Sasor, all get you to like a actually legit like combo that's pretty strong. So going first or second, particularly going second, Madolche seems to be strong, but they don't play through multiple disruptions insanely well. So that's like their one downside. But still, the deck's incredibly powerful. Has access to tools like Goes and Match as well. Plays under that extremely well, so that can catch people off guard and steal wins as well. So yeah, Madolche is definitely sneaking in here, I think, with number 12. Taking us number 13, I've got Goki here. I have Suprex on the screen, but this could also be like Warrior Link, if you want a Dark Warrior Link, you know what I mean? There's these other variants of like stuff like that, but specifically Goki here or those, they're good and they're underrated. I've seen this deck. I've made a deck profile lately with this, and I was very surprised, and I was like, wow, Gokis are way better than I thought. People need to respect them more. I put them higher on this list than a lot of people would, and I hope you guys take notes. Next up, I put like Water, whatever, Atlantean, Mermail, whatever you want to call it. This deck is still extremely scary. I mean, Infernal rips 1 or 2 cards on the way of setting up 1 or 2 disruptions. This deck just like ripped. This deck can just rip 4 or 5 cards with an Apollo, and then leave like an Apollos on the field, and you're just like, what the hell? Has some consistency issues, but I think in terms of power, if it's going first, it's winning. So you got to be scared. Next up is Unchained. This is another one of my personal favorites that I think has been getting more and more traction as months have gone on, and really respected as a going second deck that can still go first. It's so hard, really annoying to deal with, because you don't want to destroy like any of their cards, and some decks just can't grind with that. If they have to play without trying to destroy anything, some decks just are like, I can't deal with these Chunguses, and can steal some wins that way. So you got to respect Unchained. Orcus. So this is a weird one. I had trouble placing Orcus because while I think Orcus is very, very powerful, they have trouble with consistency, and they also have trouble with playing through disruption. So they're kind of fragile. They're much more fragile than they were before because they don't have access to a card like Harp Horror anymore. Like, you don't have that extra extension tool that you used to have, and it really hurts the deck's like total output, especially through one or even two disruptions. A lot of times, if you just get, Ashed, Veilered, Impermanence, Gammaed on your normal summon, you just like pass unless you draw like very specific extenders, but you can only play so many. So Orcust lands here for me. I still think they're fine. They're just nowhere near as good as they used to be in their heyday, obviously. Which takes us to the next one, which is, what is this? Shaddolls at number 17. I still think Shaddolls are good. This could be Invoked Shaddolls. This could be pure Shaddolls. I love a trap variant of Shaddolls. A little slower, but still very, very strong. Very good at grinding. You need to respect it. I mean, Wind is so incredibly strong. So strong. I mean, that card just beats half of the meta decks. I mean, it beats Dragon Link. It beats Infernoble Knights. I don't know if it necessarily beats Dinosaurs, Eldritch, or Invoked, but it still gives them problems, especially if you pair a window with like one or two other disruptions. Then those other decks still have trouble. So I definitely think you can't forget about Shaddolls. Keep in mind, they never even got hit on the ban list. They still have all the cards they had when they were the best deck in January. So just don't forget about them, okay? Next up is Generator. This is a really cool engine. Generator can be splashed with a lot of things. It's one of those decks where like it really doesn't use its normal summon too much, so you can put a lot of different types of packages in there to try and just be the normal summon, take advantage of the normal summon the deck itself doesn't use. So you could put Invoked in there, Synchro combos in there. If you just want to put something like Condemned Witch in there, that gets you like a forbidden quick play spell, as well as then tags you into Alopter. So it still gets you into like Generator stuff, which is really cool in my opinion. So I just think it's a deck that definitely hasn't seen its best days yet. It's seen its days on like the fringe of the meta, and it's kind of been laying low since then, but I still think it'll come back around and people will come back on Generator once it pairs with something really well. I think at least that's my prediction now, so gotta keep it in mind. Which takes us to our next one, which is Crusadia, number 19. This is a really cool deck. It can be played a lot of different ways. Keep in mind, I'm not necessarily counting this as like Crusadia, Rocket, Dragon Link, because I know that's a variant. That's more of a Dragon Link deck to me. Because you're just using Crusadia as like a facilitator to just go into Dragon Link combos, and it's not even as good as regular Dragon Link. So I'm talking about like Crusadia OTK plus like Crusadia Dogmatica is low key. Like you gotta check that out. If you think both those decks are cool, definitely check that out because it really helps them. A deck like Crusadia that's not as good at going second, Crusadia definitely pushes them up. Or not Crusadia, Dogmatica definitely gives them a lot of help with that, playing through disruptions and still getting to your own disruptions. It's really cool. Next up is Mech Knights. This is one of the only, other than like Dinosaurs, this is like the only actual hard go second deck on here. I guess if you want to count Crusadia. But it's a really cool deck. A few players play it, but man, the players that are good at it make this deck look so good. You got to keep this deck in mind when it comes up. I mean, you know how respected Mech Knights are when like every player's just made it a norm to just never place cards in the same column anymore, because if you happen to play a Mech Knight player, they can punish you. So nobody does that anymore, and I think it's hilarious, and I love it. I think Mech Knights are a really cool deck. And number 20, right? Yeah. Which takes us to our next one. This is definitely a personal favorite of mine, Trap Tricks, particularly Trap Tricks Dogmatica. No joke, this deck got a huge buff from Dogmatica. It took a deck that was just like Paleos, like 30 traps and 10 monsters, to a deck that plays like 20 monsters, 5 spells, and 15 traps. Still a trap-based deck, but the deck is so much more versatile now at going second, pushing through disruptions, and that's huge. It definitely helps the deck play in other situations, particularly going second, particularly when your opponent has hand traps, still being able to add extra disruptions on there and get yourself to a better board state. So you got to respect Trap Tricks. I really think they're underplayed. If they were played more, I think they could potentially be like pushing top 10 status, but they're not. But I personally love them, and I like that not enough people play them because it's cooler when they are played. Next up is Plunder Patrol. This is another deck. It's a lot of people thought this deck was really cool. I still think it's good, but it takes a specific pilot. It's a harder deck to play for sure. So you got to have somebody in the right driver's seat. You got to have somebody who loves the deck. But man, when it works really, really well. So yeah, Plunders. Don't sleep on them. Next up is Burning Abyss at number 23. I think the deck is better. Like, obviously more consistent. a little more grindy now that we have the double graph, the double seer, and the triple tour guide. But not so much has changed for the deck in terms of power, in terms of how well it maintains boards like states. It just grinds a little better and is a little more consistent at getting to those board states. So I think until like the Phantom Knight stuff comes out and we can see like PK Fire with like the new PK stuff, I think this deck's going to sit somewhere around the 20s, 25, just because it's just not there by itself just yet. So Burning Abyss I've got at number 23, taking us to number 24, which is Lightsworn, specifically Lightsworn Chaos builds. These decks are incredibly powerful, insanely powerful, but there's a big but. It struggles with consistency. Any deck built like Lightsworn's is going to struggle with consistency. You have to play the cards that mill, and then you have to play a certain number of cards that want to be milled but aren't great to draw. So there's definitely consistency issues there. I think it could top something like a regional, fairly well, especially with a good pilot that knows the intricacies of the deck. But I also think in a longer tournament like a YCS, the deck would just struggle. You would just lose 1 to 2 automatic rounds just because of bad mills, and that's not the kind of deck you want to play at a big tournament like that. But I still respect it just for the power output the deck has, because it really is powerful. And then our last deck here, which is Magical Musketeers. I also wanted to throw like shout outs to like Altergeist and Cyber Dragons and like Thunder Dragons, Dragon Maids, ABCs. Like all those decks were very close for me throwing them in there, but I only had 25 slots here, guys, so I really threw the ones that I thought really made the cut. But all those are definitely honorary mentions and could easily fit on this list, because this one's just my opinion here. But Magical Musketeers always slept on. They had that format like last year where they were just like topping every other event. As like a rogue deck. They're very good. They pair with Eldritch. They pair with other stuff. Could potentially pair with Dogmatica. They're a really cool deck. A lot of times you see them go second, but they could go first potentially. But you'll probably see them second with like Mech Knights or Eldritch stuff. Trying to just break through boards and then maintain their own board control and just get it done. So it's another good deck. It's really powerful, and I have it here in my 25 slot. So, guys, just scrolling back through here, that's pretty much it. I wanted to make this video because stuff has really shifted around. Like, you remember back when Sally's were like tier 1, and then like what the hell happened? Like so much changed. None of these decks were tier 1. So much changed. And I want to make a video just talking about this. I haven't really made a video talking about like the top decks in a while, so that's what this is going to be. And I also like talking about all these decks that kind of get slept on a little bit, but you shouldn't, because they all can compete. They all could top 16, top 8 any of these tournaments any given day, especially the online ones. And I think you'd be a fool not to respect them. So yeah, I know this video ran a little bit long. We did go through 25 decks though. So thank you so much for watching, guys. As always, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff from me in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.